we are, the Warrior Poet Project, with the reason that there is this podcast is because I hopped on a podcast with this guy right here, Mr. Joe Rogan. Honored to have you on my little Warrior Poet Project.
Honored to be here, sir.
Yes, indeed. So a lot of people don't really probably know, and I get asked the question a lot, how did you and Joe Rogan get linked up? And so I guess I'll tell the story here. So what happened was we had a little business deal we were going to work out, and we decided to go to lunch. And I had seen Joe perform comedy before. And when you were performing comedy back then, this was like at least 10 years ago, I thought, holy shit, he sees things in a way that I like to see things. And it kind of fucking blew my mind because that was not mainstream back then at all. I mean, you were putting ideas out that were quite a bit different than a lot of the stuff that you would hear. And so I took note, and then, somehow our paths seemed to find a way to cross, and we just met for lunch. And that lunch turned into like a 4-hour discussion about super volcanoes and aliens and all kinds of the shit we love. And then, some years later, here we are today.
Yeah, we had never even considered having a sponsor for the podcast. It was never even on the radar. The idea of the podcast was just fun. And as the podcast started to grow, I don't even remember how you contacted us. I don't remember what the method was, but all of a sudden we're having lunch, and we're talking about fleshlights.
Yeah,
it was back when you were running Fleshlight, and it was fascinating because we were like, all right, it'd be a fun podcast sponsor. We'll have a sponsor. So now we got a sponsor, and from then, the podcast has sort of like morphed and grown and become this weird, crazy thing. And, we're no longer with the Fleshlight, and you and I are hanging out.
Yeah, things are going on. Yeah, I listened to it, and I said, man, this is probably reaching a lot of people. It has no sponsors. And I thought this would be kind of cool to make this happen. I happened to be selling fake vaginas at the time. It wouldn't have mattered. I could have been selling barbecue sauce at the time. I would have still tried to be a sponsor for the podcast because I saw the power that it had. It really was a new medium. It was allowing the listener to hang out with somebody that they normally wouldn't get to hang out with and just feel like they're a part of the conversation, even if they're a little on the quiet side.
Well, it's also because of the fact that it was so unprofessional. It was more like a conversation than it was a show. And I think that's what people liked about it. People liked because they felt like they were in on a conversation as opposed to some sort of a show, because that was the number one criticism we got when we first started doing it. Like, oh God, sloppy editing, and these guys, they don't care about it. They're not even caring. This is just so poorly thought out. Yeah, terrible. We're not thinking about it at all. We're just doing it as we go along. We're banking on the fact that it's better to have an actual real conversation and actually have opinions about things that you haven't rehearsed. It's better to have that than it is to have some sort of a pre-planned out monologue and canned questions and just
some kind of
pushing an
Piers
agenda.
Morgan bullshit.
Oh yeah, did you see the video where Chelsea Handler owns
I just
Piers
saw that.
Morgan?
That's just what I saw.
I love her.
And it reminded me that all those questions. And I do podcasts all the time. I have a hard time saying no to podcasts just because I have a soft spot. So it'll be anybody with some kind of recorder or their cell phone up to the regular phone recording, and it'll just be question after question. And some of them get kind of brutal, but I know they're trying to push it out there. But I like the way you did it, and you finally broke me this last time of getting to the point where I had absolutely no idea in hell what I was going to talk about. You're like, come on, let's do a podcast. I'm like, Joe, we just did what I have nothing to say. You're like, don't worry about it. I was like, okay, fuck it.
Well, you can't go in there wondering whether or not you're going to have something to say, because there's always something to say.
Yep.
That's one thing I said to you. Like, we're not going to run out of things to talk about if there's no microphone on.
Yeah.
Right.
Indeed.
So why would we run out of things to talk about because there's a microphone on? There's too much out there in the world today. There's too much material, too much information, too much going on. The idea that you wouldn't have something to say about something is crazy.
Yeah.
That's like, I can't breathe anymore. There's no more air. There's plenty of air. There's plenty of information. There's plenty of topics. And it was one of our best podcasts.
Yeah, no doubt.
They've all been great. They've all been great.
I think, going back to those very first ones, I forget which number it was. I know like 127 was the ayahuasca story, but then earlier on it was Chris Marcus podcast back then, way back in the early days. And those were really interesting, man. That was the first time, where I had gone through and done something, and then all of a sudden I had Twitter followers. And I was like, oh shit, look at this. This is weird. Yeah. Like it was really kind of a wild experience. And then, being a part as it's all gone through, it's now a force of nature. Like it's out there. It's its own beast.
It's totally its own beast. I just get out of the way of it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I call myself the conduit, so that's what it is. I'm sort of like an antenna that picks up the lightning, and I have this guy on and that guy on, and I schedule people that I find interesting, and I just try to bring in people that I want to talk to. That's all I try to do, and then get them in there. And like I had a guy on, Peter Giuliano, the other day, who is a coffee expert. Mm-hmm. People are like, you're gonna fucking talk about coffee for 3 hours? The dude was fascinating. Yep. I mean, he was the perfect guy for it too, because he's just so into tastes and cultivating these different beans in different climates. And I found out there's like 5,000 different types of coffee in Ethiopia, and only like 30 worldwide other than that, and that they all come from Ethiopia, and that's the origins of coffee. And like talking to this guy who's like a real coffee expert and a total coffee geek. It was amazing. It was fascinating. And I've got, I don't know how many Twitter messages say, I thought this was going to suck. This is one of the best podcasts you ever did. And
that's awesome.
It's because, it's because the guest was amazing, but also because these are things I'm interested in. Yeah. I'm interested in stuff. If I can get an astrophysicist on and we could talk about quantum theory, I will do that. I mean, we did that with Dr. Amit Goswami, and it was one of the most confusing but equally fascinating podcasts too. It's just the idea of not having anybody else to step in the way, and to get this sort of singularity of idea that you can get from a podcast, the singularity of a vision, like one person's conversations with people. Mm-hmm. It probably should call, that's what I should probably call it, instead of the Joe Rogan Experience, Conversations with Joe Rogan. Yeah. Because that's really what it is. Sure. It's just, I'm the only constant and just bringing people in that are interesting.
And I think one of the things that makes it interesting to everybody is you're genuinely enthusiastic about a lot of things. And I think that's one of the great attributes that you have is, even no matter what it is, you really get passionate and fired up about it. Archery, pool, coffee, whatever. It can be any little thing. Of course, MMA, we know that, comedy, these other things. And I think that's really helped kind of benefit you in your path, I would have to say, is your just raw enthusiasm for exploring and getting to know things better and, seeing what you like in life.
Well, I've also become incredibly fortunate in that all these things that I really enjoy are also my job. Where a lot of people have passions for things, but they're stuck in a job that they don't have a passion for. Like Cameron Haynes, who has become a good friend, who's this famous bow hunter. And we had a conversation about bow hunting, about his life. He's like, it's really hard to become a famous bow hunter. How do you become a famous bow hunter? This guy's figured out how to do it.
Go on the Joe Rogan Experience.
That certainly helps. But he talks with incredible passion about the training that he goes through. I mean, he's a dedicated ultra marathon runner. He's run a 100-mile marathon. He runs marathons on a regular basis. And all that is to build up his endurance for bow hunting, because he goes out deep into the woods and shoots elk, and then has to bring back these 100-pound slabs of meat on his back and make many trips back and forth to recover these. I mean, you're talking about like oftentimes a 1,200, 1,300-pound animal. Mm-hmm. And so this guy is so dedicated to that he's like really in shape and really passionate about it. And that passion is really contagious. And the guy has a regular job. His regular job sucks. And he's at his regular job and he says he feels like he's dying. Mm-hmm. I'm super lucky in that I have these things that I'm passionate about, but they're also what I do for a living. So I don't have this one thing that I have to do that I hate, and then I get out of there and I go do what I love. I'm unbelievably lucky that I do what I love all the time.
Sure.
Like my whole day is filled with doing what I love to do.
But there's a lot of people, even if they're in this kind of thing, it's easy to get lulled into a sleep where everything is a little bit dull. And I think one of the things that's important to do is do things that allow you to refresh your senses.
Yes.
Whatever that is, whether it's floating, whether it's psychedelics, whatever you got to do, it's something that wipes the slate clean so you can look back at life and say, holy shit, this is amazing. Yeah. Whoever set this up, this is awesome.
And do new things.
Do new things.
That's the other thing. I just started skiing recently. Last year was our first time skiing. Archery is a new thing for me, Martial arts has been a part of my whole life, but I love just learning new techniques, I love showing. Like we were, TJ Dillashaw and we're going over some tech, and Danny Castillo, we were going over some techniques with Whitney today, and I get so excited just about technique, just showing someone something that they maybe didn't know before, or they show me something that I didn't know before. I love learning things. I love showing people things that I've learned, and I love learning things. I mean, I think that that's one of the coolest things about communication is that we could share information. We could share things that, there's people out there that their whole life is spent studying something with deep passion that you've never even heard about. Mm-hmm. And then you stumble upon them and you're like, what? Salamanders? What kind of salamanders, man? And the next thing you know, you're on a fucking salamander journey, and you get excited about salamanders too.
I tell that to anybody who's applying for a job at Honor, anybody I talk to is like, be really great at anything, like really be passionate, go all the way, and no matter what it is. And salamanders is a great example. Bonsai trees. I don't care. I will spend 30 minutes talking to the bonsai tree expert. If you're out there, hit me up. I'll talk to you for real. Like whatever, if you have any niche, it's like, oh, that's really interesting, and you always find out these cool things that you never would have thought of.
Did you see Jiro Dreams of Sushi?
No, I didn't.
It's interesting. It's very, very interesting. I don't want to live that life. But this stoic existence of repeating the same thing over and over again until you achieve ultimate mastery of it. And that mastery is just making sushi. I always looked at sushi like, oh, you cutting fish and putting on rice. What are you doing? You spend your whole life doing that? But when you watch that movie and you see the dedication involved in what this guy's done, it's really humbling. It's very humbling. I mean, he's in his 80s. And he's been making sushi his whole life. He has a 10-seat restaurant in a Tokyo subway station. And they're booked up for months in advance.
Yeah, that's very much an application of Zen that, the Japanese kind of, I don't know if they necessarily originated, but it's certainly been associated with their culture for many, many years. And it's fascinating to look at that. I mean, you can apply it to archery, apply it to sushi. One of the classic things you apply Zen to is flower arrangement, how to put flowers properly in a vase. And they spend years of their life dedicated to that. Me and you probably go, oh, nice flowers. Never see it, but they would look and understand the Zen of it. You know, like being in the moment. The tea ceremony, how to whisk the matcha, how to pour it. And it's really kind of attractive when you see someone putting that much care into something little.
Yeah, you can see what it is that they get enthusiastic about, and that sort of is very contagious. A lot of times it's things that I'm not interested in, like sushi.
Right.
I enjoy sushi, but I have no desire to become a sushi chef. But occasionally it's something that I am interested in, like bow hunting. And they go, oh, wow, I want to do what this guy's doing.
Yeah.
This seems like this guy's having fun,
And then one of the attributes that you have that I think is great for other people to apply is when you like something, you go deep. I mean, you're in it. You just recently picked up archery, and you're already going deep. I mean, your house is littered with tools and implements and things like that. Bows are strung out everywhere. There's targets in the lawn. Chickens are walking by. You're shuffling the chickens away and shooting targets. You go deep. You go in.
Yeah, I don't believe in half-assing things. This life is short. If you get into something, get into it. And if you're not into it, don't be into it,
There's that old saying, it's better to dig one hole 100 feet deep than 100 holes 1 foot deep.
I'm 100 holes 100 feet deep. I'm retarded. I when people say that they're bored, oh, I'm so bored, I don't know what to do. I'm like, oh my God, I've never been bored ever. My problem in life is I have too many things that I love doing. That's my problem in life. If I could be a race car driver, and if I could compete in jiu-jitsu tournaments and do stand-up comedy and do commentary for the UFC and play pool professionally, I would just keep going. If I could just live a bunch of lives simultaneously, then I would be satisfied. But I probably wouldn't even be, because I although I love doing all these various things, I don't think I want to do any one of them only. One of the things that I like is that I think they all feed into each other.
Yep.
I think podcasting feeds into comedy, and comedy feeds into commentary. Commentary feeds into my knowledge of martial arts. Martial arts feeds into my ability to control my ego and relax my body and control my discipline and encourage my body to do things that it doesn't want to do, strengthening my resolve. Like, all those things are connected. They're all connected.
One of the interesting things, and the whole concept of the warrior poet, is the ability to do things that are usually seen as opposites, the warrior or the poet. And so the idea and the whole concept of the philosophy is that you don't have to be one or the other.
Yeah.
And you were one of the few people that we saw, and something that constantly amazes people is that you're very much ostensibly from appearance in that warrior archetype. Ex-world champion, Taekwondo fighter.
I was never a world champion. I won the U.S. Open.
So. Right, U.S. champion, U.S. Open champion, Taekwondo fighter, and big in MMA, Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And then, but also there's another side of you that embraces yoga, floating, psychedelics, and the other side, which is traditionally, the yin side of that. Did you feel like you always had that, or was that something where you started down one path and then just kind of veered the other way and now embrace them both? Or did you always have that kind of feeling?
No, I was very imbalanced when I was younger. I was a berserker. I was crazy. Before I stopped competing, I was absolutely an insane person. From the time I was competing, from I was like 15 to like say 21, I was unrecognizable. I wasn't the same person I am now. I didn't even like the fact that I liked sex, because I thought that sex was pleasure and that pleasure was weak.
Wow, how Spartan of you.
I was crazy.
And then, so what changed? Something shifted.
Well, I stopped competing, first of all. That was one thing. And huge release, relaxation, like this different way of living life where I'm not worried all the time. Like, I realized, like, from 15 to 21, it was just a series of preparing for horrifying events, getting through them, trying to relax, but worried about the next horrifying event. It was just constantly dealing with competition. And I started competing at a very high level very young. When I was 15 years old, I was fighting against men. I had a crazy instructor. This guy, Michael O'Malley, who was a multiple-time national champion, one of the best Taekwondo fighters in the world at the time. He took me in very young and gave me not just great guidance, but gave me a home. And I started teaching, and I was teaching from the time I was 15. I was like almost immediately. And I had my black belt by the time I was 17, but I was fighting as a black belt before I was even a black belt. He just put a black belt on me and throw me out there against men. When I was 15, 16 years old, I was fighting in the men's division. I mean, he just had this philosophy of just throwing you into the fire, because that's what he did. His instructor, who was also my instructor, Jay Kim, was one of the original students of General Che Young-hee, who was the Grand Master of Taekwondo, and he developed it for the Korean Army. And he was just a guy in a similar mode to what Elio Gracie did for Jiu-Jitsu. He was a guy who really figured out what the best techniques are for Taekwondo. And a lot of people look at Taekwondo, and they look at a Taekwondo that he was very opposed to. His style of Taekwondo was very different than what you see like in these point tournaments. Like you see like even a lot of Olympic Taekwondo, they're trying to win scoring points. He was all about power, and he was all about knockouts. He was all about brutal kicking power. And so he taught us the pure form of Taekwondo, and he taught Michael O'Malley the pure form of Taekwondo. And so that was my life. From 15 to 21 was just controlled violence. Just that's all it was. And occasionally sex. And I'm telling you, man, that was it. I mean, I started teaching at Boston University when I was 19 years old. So I was teaching Taekwondo at BU. I was running my own school. I was teaching at J. Kim school and just competing constantly. I mean, I don't even know how many times I fought.
Sure.
I didn't keep track. I have no idea. I won the Massachusetts State Championship 4 years in a row, and I won a bunch of other, fairly big tournaments. Leading up to when I was competing, when I was training for the Olympics in '88, I started kickboxing. And when I started kickboxing, I started realizing there's a lot of holes in Taekwondo. And it really fucked me up because I've realized that I had gone down this really great path, what I thought was a really great path, had a lot of holes in it. There was a bit
narrow.
There was things wrong with it. I started sparring with kickboxers. I was getting punched in the face too much. It was just, I was getting lit up in the gym, and I was like, I was not used to doing that. I was used to being the lighter. I wasn't used to being the match. I wasn't used to being the cigarette, So I lost a lot of enthusiasm for Taekwondo. I did some kickboxing. I had 3 kickboxing bouts. I won 2, lost 1, and then I realized I was doing that as I was doing comedy at the same time, and I realized I was spreading myself too thin, and the first thing I decided to do was quit teaching, because I said that if I couldn't dedicate myself to teaching the way I was taught, I wasn't going to do it, because the way I was taught and the enthusiasm that I developed because of the intensity of my instructor and my love for what he was trying to teach me was so valuable to me that to water that down or to half-ass it wasn't an option. So it was my only form of income. So I quit. I mean, I delivered newspapers as well, which I made like a couple $100 here and there as like a side gig, because I'd always done that all throughout my competition days. But I knew that there was, I had to quit. I had to quit everything, and then I just dove into comedy. When I dove into comedy, a bunch of things happened. One, I all of a sudden in doing stand-up comedy, I had to worry about what people thought of me, which was completely not a concern when I was fighting. Yeah. Matter of fact, I wanted them to not like me.
Right.
Like I wanted to, I would do things on purpose so that people would not like me, so that they would worry about me.
There'd be an advantage.
So they would think about me. So they would, there would be some sort of tension between us.
Sure, and you got to be effective, you have to be absolutely, you have to have complete disregard for everybody else watching almost.
Yeah, you have to be
the other way to think.
You have to be a crazy person. to be a really high level fighter, I really believe there's a type of insanity that I don't want to say that I was ever great, because I think I'd never even reached my potential, because I stopped fighting when I was 21. 22 maybe. Maybe I had my last kickboxing fight when I was 22. Somewhere around there, 21, 22. I don't think I was ever great, but I was on the road. And if I kept on that road, I would have been an insane great person. And I think that insanity and greatness are next door neighbors, and they borrow each other's sugar. That's my that's what I've always said. There's something about mastery, like true mastery, that requires you to shut off massive areas of your life, personal areas, relationships, education. My education was a joke. I mean, until I was 21 years old, until I started doing stand-up comedy, I didn't read books. I mean, I might have read a Stephen King book here and there to kill time while I was on the train on my way to training, but there was no desire to educate myself. If I was educating myself, it was maybe reading the Book of Five Rings to learn better strategy, to be a better fighter. That was all it was.
So then at some point, you throw yourself into comedy, but still there's that whole other aspect that you had to develop either consciously, or did it just come from learning and being around and just kind of develop organically? Or was there ever a point where you said, I'm a little out of balance, I need to go the other way?
Well, I realized I was a flawed person for sure. And I think in realizing that you're a flawed person.
What helped you realize that?
Just fucking up. Just being an idiot, realizing, girls would get mad at me, or maybe guys would get mad at me, whatever it was. I realized that I had flaws, I knew that I was, and then also failing at comedy. One of the hardest things to do is to go from being really great at something to sucking at something. And that's something that you suck at is now your path, and that's what I found myself in comedy. Like, I could get laughs every now and then, but I knew I wasn't anything special. I knew I was terrible. And there was something exciting about being terrible, because I had potential, because there was potential for growth. If you start doing it and you're great at it, like naturally, like maybe I wouldn't have had the motivation to do it as a living for 25 years like I've done. I don't know. But at that time, making that transition from martial arts competition to being a comedian, that's when I started going down the road of balance and started trying to balance myself as a person. And I started trying to almost educate myself to have more things to talk about on stage. And then along the way, my curiosity started to blossom. And then I started to just be interested in things for being interested in them. And as I got better as a comedian, I became less worried about what other people thought about me, and more worried about just improving and keeping this sort of momentum going. And as I relaxed more, in having some success in life, and sort of not worrying about bills as much, not worrying about my future, then I started to explore altered states of consciousness, and then I really started opening up the door to the whole yin and the yang.
So the altered states of consciousness, psychedelic experiences, that was kind of an accelerator for something that was already in process.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was trying to do it with meditation and yoga before that. And
it's a challenge just doing that alone. When you have it, for me, people ask, well, why do you need that? Can't you do it with meditation and yoga? Sure, you can. But for me, it's like saying, you guys, you have a place to get to. Just go there. And you're like, well, what's that place like? And you're like, well, I don't know. I can't really describe it.
Yeah.
And they're like, but just get there. And you don't really know where the fuck you're going until you've done a psychedelic, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's the place I'm trying to get to meditation. Oh, after you do a float tank, oh yeah, that's where I'm trying to go. That's how I want to feel after I'm done doing yoga or some of these things. So I think it's a really useful tool to show you, hey, this is where you're headed, buddy. And then you can get there a ton of different ways.
Yeah, have you ever heard the Terrence McKenna had this great story about this monk meeting the Buddha. And this monk met the Buddha and said, oh, great Buddha, I have practiced a city of levitation for over 40 years, and now I can walk on water. And the Buddha went, but the ferry's only a nickel. And that's the idea behind, taking psychedelics. Like, yeah, you could go to the ashram and fucking sit on your knees and home, and you can reach an altered state of consciousness.
Sure.
I've reached altered states of consciousness through yoga. I definitely have. But they've been nothing like DMT. Mm-hmm. There's a level that you're not going to get to. I don't think. I mean, I might be wrong. Maybe there's incredible discipline involved and you could do it for 100 years, but the ferry's only a nickel.
Yeah,
exactly. Smoke the DMT and you get that fully compressed new data that goes scrambling through your brain.
At least know it, like somebody who's has a really good meditation practice, and says, oh, I don't need it. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but try it and see if that's a place that you would like to get to. I know a story that I heard when I was down in Peru is one of the shamans had someone who had a 30-year meditation practice. They sat on the cushion, they chanted the chants, and they came down and did the ayahuasca session. They brought their cushion with them. After their ayahuasca session, they go up and they give the shaman the cushion. And the shaman says, no, I can't take this. You've sat on this for, you got 20 years of miles on this cushion. He's like, man, most of the time I sat on that cushion, I was just trying not to think about sex. And he's like, after taking ayahuasca, now I fucking get it, And so I'm sure his meditation practice was better, but it was kind of a symbolic gesture of like, hey, you really fucking showed me something here.
Yeah, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with thinking about sex.
It's
a part of the whole thing. It's part of the whole life. It's one of the beautiful aspects of this great big picture. The idea of like this stoic guy in orange robes sitting there doing nothing, it's kind of preposterous. You know, you're missing out on a lot of life just to try to achieve these states that you can get with mushrooms.
There's a quote from William Blake recently that is kind of interesting. It says, those who restrain their desires have desires weak enough to be restrained. And I was like, all right, William Blake.
I love it. That's a great quote.
Yeah, I like it. And
wow. I got to remember that. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
So and that's one of the philosophies that I try to say is don't find the balance by riding this narrow margin where you never sway one side or the other. Find the balance by pushing the extremes out as far as you can on either fucking side. Go for a 7-day fast on the top of a mountain where your only substance you're ingesting is water and peyote. Like, do that, or meditation or whatever. Whatever's on the farthest side that you can reach for that. And then go the other way, stand on top of some speakers in a nightclub and pound your chest and howl at the fucking moon. Like that's
why
balance
not?
To me.
Yeah, why not? Enjoy life. Life is filled with so many different kinds of experiences that are available. And that's one of the things that you sort of open up to when you relax. When you relax and, you don't worry about what you look like, you don't worry about what you sound like, you don't worry about how people feel about you. Because you've thought about all these different things on your own, and you've kind of corrected as many things as you can correct given that time period. But you feel comfortable that you're on a good path. Mm-hmm. Then you sort of can entertain ideas that maybe you wouldn't if you were insecure or more insecure. I think you have to be insecure if you're finite, Or
even when you don't think you're insecure, some little thing will happen and be like, oh shit, there you are.
You're a human.
Old friend insecurity. I see you now.
Just the idea. I mean, we're worried about death. We're worried about disease. We're worried about loved ones. We're always going to be, in a certain sense, insecure. We're worried about being sexually attractive. We're worried about being socially interesting.
Sure.
There's always going to be some form of insecurity, but that's also part of the balance of life too. It's like you don't ever get to bliss. What you get to do is chase bliss. You get to enjoy the moment. The moment is amazing, and it'll go away, and you'll be fucking tired, and you got to get up, and you got to drive in traffic, and you're not going to like it, and you got to, do some shit you don't want to do. There's a lot of times where I work out where I don't want to, and I make myself do it. If I was living in bliss, I'd just be a fat fuck sitting on the couch, thinking that I don't want to do that. My life is about enjoyment. No, there's enjoyment in doing things you don't enjoy.
There's three, I read something from Eckhart Tolle that really resonated more than the others, and that's that he recommended 3 states of being. And one, the bare minimum is acceptance. Let's say you're in a really shitty situation. It's pouring rain. You got to change a tire. Everything's going all fucked up. You can either get really frustrated and aggravated about that and resist it. Oh, this fucking sucks. And you can work yourself into a frenzy. Or you could just accept it, be in the moment, say, well, this is what's going on right now. Now, that's not obviously the best way to be. The best way would be to be an enjoyment of the moment. So that's the second modality is, oh, man, I'm really enjoying the present, enjoying the moment. And then the third and best way is what he calls enthusiasm. And that's when you get enjoyment plus a goal. It's like you're really in the moment, you're enjoying it, but you're going after something. You're chasing something that you love. And that's the best way to live. But as long as you're in one of those 3, you're not going to be suffering and you're not going to be all, depressed and bummed out.
Yeah, and I think that really highlights what we were talking about earlier about why I have so many different interests and so many different things that I chase down. I fuel myself with enthusiasm, and there's so many things to be enthusiastic about. That's one of the most amazing things about the time that we live in, is that we have access to things that aren't near us. We can bring them to us, whether it's physically bring them to us or go to where they are or watch things that are not near you or read about things that are not near you. This is a very unique time. And these tools, it would be a terrible tragedy to not take advantage of these. And, when I talk to people that don't have interests and they don't pursue a bunch of different things, they sort of do the same shit over and over again, and they kind of half-ass it and they're bored with it. I'm like, you could do different. You could There's a way to do this where it's more fun. Like there's other options. Like you don't have to be lazy. You don't have to be. You'll have more energy if you're not lazy. Like it sounds contradictory, but in expending that energy, you actually create more.
Yeah, in the laziest day that you have and you really don't want to do something, you get out and you push hard towards something. It'll change the whole momentum of your day, whether it's a workout or whether it's really diving into that thing you've been fucking avoiding that you got to do. That kind of momentum will fuel you to a different state of mind and a state of being.
And sometimes I like to do fucking nothing. I like that too. Sometimes I sit home and I watch TV and I don't do shit. And people say, you should never do that. Well, why not? If that's what I want to do, as long as all my I's are dotted and T's are crossed, I believe in balance. And if I know I'm not an undisciplined person, so if I feel like just chilling out, I'll just chill out. And then the next day, I'll be more fired up to do things.
Sure.
And I'll enjoy that chilling out. I'll be satisfied, enjoying just eating a meal in front of the television and watching a movie with my feet up on the couch, just relaxing. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, too.
Yeah, you got to find what makes a balance. I had a conversation with actually family of mine, a cousin of mine, and I was trying to encourage him to get in a float tank, and he wanted to do it or do a psychedelic experience because he said he just doesn't feel like he's getting deep enough in his thinking and knowing who he is and what his path is. But he's extremely busy. He runs, a big company, constant emails. He's like, if I give up 6 hours, then everything's just going to pile up. I said, well, yes, but what you got to realize is by doing that, you're going to be way more efficient for everything else you're doing. It's like that quote from Abraham Lincoln: "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree. I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." It's doing things in a way where, if you take that time to get yourself right, you're going to be way more effective in what you're doing. Cut through all the bullshit in half the time, and that momentum is going to carry you even further.
Yeah, momentum is a big thing with human beings. It's a big thing for me, at least. My momentum is very important. When I'm on a good streak, if I'm on a good momentum of healthy eating and exercise, I love it. I like waking up sore, and I like, pushing further. I like writing down my workouts, what I've done, and I like hitting that gym hard on a daily basis, and I build momentum. And I find that when I do that with writing, whether I do that with performing, whether I do that with anything, it just gets everything going. It just creates energy. And so being lazy robs you of energy. Like being sedentary, being uninspired, being bored, it robs you of one of the most precious things you can have in this life, enthusiasm.
Yeah. And I think another one of the things that both of us, really prize, and something that, I really admired from you from an early point is, being ruthlessly honest, most importantly with yourself, but as much as possible with the rest of the world and life. Everybody tries to position and maneuver and put out these different faces. It's so much easier when you really just know yourself and you just say, look, take it or leave it.
Yeah. It's the only way to do it. And it's really bad if you're not doing it that way for you. It's hard to keep track of the bullshit. And you also, if you fuck up, it's important to say you fucked up. It is. It's important to everyone that knows you. It's important to everyone that you communicate with. If you have a mistake, and like I tell all my friends my mistakes, and I tell the big ones, like with other comedians. Like if I have a shitty set, I'm fucking the first guy to call one of my, like Aubrey or someone up. Dude, I had a fucking shit set last night. What happened? I don't know, man. I think I was dehydrated or something. I wasn't in the mood. I couldn't get cracking. Like something just wasn't clicking, and I was in the middle of it, and I was like, oh my God, this is coming out clunky. And meanwhile, the audience probably didn't even know it was bad.
I know.
It could be one flubbed word, one forgotten punchline that they didn't even know existed. And I'm like, fuck! But I'll be the first guy.
Yeah.
I'll be the first guy. If I fuck up, if I get angry at something I shouldn't have got angry with, I pride myself in calling myself out. I think you got to do that.
You got to do that. And then the next important step is, after you've done that, after you've analyzed it and figured out how to fix it, you got to let that shit go.
Let it go.
Let that shit go.
Let it go. Only bitches hold on to the past. Stop. You're not the past. That's one of the things that I tell people all the time, because a lot of people have a hard time defining themselves. They define themselves by failure because they've failed. But I'm like, you're not your failures. You're you. Okay? Your life is a series of lessons you've learned. Now, if you just dwell on the failures, like that's not healthy. It's not smart, and it's not empowering. What you got to do is look at those failures and go, well, now you know what not to do. But you're not that. You're you. You could have done the stupidest fucking shit ever, but it's not you. That's not you. You're a different thing. You're the being that's experiencing all these failures. And if you know that they're fuck ups, then you've learned. Okay? If you repeat them over and over again, well, then I can't talk to you. Yeah. If you keep going back and doing the same stupid shit over and over again, well, you got a deeper issue. I don't know what it is, but I don't have the time. Right. Good luck.
Yeah, deciding that you are who you are right at this moment. I think there's a quote from Heraclitus that says, "No man steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man."
Ooh, that's two fucking home runs by Aubrey.
I got him, man. I got him going today.
Those are good.
But
that's a good one.
That's the truth, because the universe, the world is changing, your environment's changing. All of that's different. The river has changed. And you as a person are different than that person that made that choice, because you made that choice. Every second on the bleeding edge, you're slightly different than the second before. And you can decide at any one of those points that say, that was the tipping point of me being something different. These changes, people think they happen in these grand movements, but really the tipping point effect is you just got to get over the hump to be something completely different. And that can be a fraction, one thought, one action, one deed, and you're completely different.
I heard Tony Robbins put it really well once. We was talking about changing your path, that if two people are on a parallel path, like say maybe you're in a boat, two boats are on a parallel path, and one takes just a 2-degree turn to the right. Over the course of time, they'll be so far apart from each other, because that 2-degree turn, will continue forward in that direction, whereas the other one will keep going in the direction it was going in. And just one little change like that can make a huge impact in the future of your life. The problem with a lot of people is they make a little turn and then they turn back. Make a little turn and turn back. Oh, well, I was eating real healthy for a while, then I got fat, I quit the gym. Stop smoking cigarettes, but...
It's almost like as soon as they touch back to the right path, they're like, sweet, I can blow it now.
Well, people get scared, and there's comfort in patterns. You know, when you have a when you have a pattern, even if it's a bad pattern like shitty food or cigarettes, that pattern is kind of your friend. You know, you get accustomed to that feeling of lighting that cigarette up, taking that deep breath and just saying fuck it, inhaling that smoke and feeling that old friend nicotine race through your veins, and you're like, all right, I smoke again, so I smoke again. And I don't know how many people that I know that have done that. I've seen it over and over and over again. And that's not just a physical addiction. It's certainly a physical addiction, a very difficult one to kick, but it's also a path. It's a path that's cut deep into the grooves of your psyche, and like a little marble, it falls right in that slot and goes rolling nice and smooth.
Yeah, well, and it doesn't even have to be cigarettes. It can be relationship patterns. It can be different drama that you feed off of in a relationship that you can't seem to ever get away from, no matter who you're with.
Could be gambling.
And the way,
could be anything.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the reasons why these psychedelics are showing so much promise in helping people cut these either bad behavioral patterns or bad physical addictions is they give you a moment to reflect where the rest of that noise just shuts the fuck up for a second. Yep. And it's like everything else gets quiet, and you can say, oh, what course am I on? And do I want to be on that course? Is that the best course for my authentic self? And every once in a while, getting that moment is so huge, so crucial, however you do it.
It's so huge, and it's so incredibly attractive when you know someone that's doing that. Like, you want to be around them. You know, when someone's on a good path and someone's healthy and positive, like, you're gravitated towards them. You gravitate towards them. They're magnetic, you know, because we all kind of want that, but we can't do it on our own. The way you get there is by all the lessons of all the people that have walked all the footsteps and fucked up all before you and wrote it down or talked about it or talked about the positive things that they figured out, talked about the inspirations that they found worthwhile, and then we all feed off those, and then we carry them on to other people, you know, and like herpes or whatever the fuck it is, it just spreads.
The positive herpes.
The positive herpes. That's the name of this podcast, Positive Herpes.
Yes.
That's my new album, Positive Herpes. Available
Would be
on
a
iTunes.
good band name.
It's not a bad name. Yeah, it's pretty good. But there's something to that. It's like, it is like memes are almost like living things. Ideas are almost like living things.
Meme, here it is. Get positive herpes and go fuck the world.
Go fuck the world with your positive herpes.
That's the theme. Joe, it's been a fucking pleasure and an honor to be on this journey with you, man. I look forward to a lifetime of years ahead, and just awesome, man.
I feel the same way, brother. Meeting people like you is, it's, first of all, it's awesome to meet someone that is also like on a positive path, that is a really good person, that it's a healthy person, and a person that challenges himself, and they're honest, and you're an inspirational dude, you know, and I'm really glad that we're friends, and this has been an honor for me to be your friend and to be involved with you, and I think that what we're doing together, I think this connection that we have is, it lights a lot of other fires, you know, and I think those people out there are doing the same thing that we're doing, you know, and we're doing it because someone did it to us. Some sparks of literature or film or whatever it is did it to us, and we will continue that, and then other people will join into. And, you know, as I said earlier today, when we were talking about On It, that we're part of a movement. It's not just about a company with a name. It's not. There's a movement, and it doesn't just involve us. It involves human beings that are trying to live their life in a better pattern. And that there's so many of us that are living on this momentum of an ignorant past, and we're stuck in this system that we didn't ask for. We have no control over. And through self-exploration, through these kind of discussions, through constant searching, you know, more of these intellectual fires get lit, you know, so.
And that's it. It's a feedback system, you know, and at best we're just a conduit that allows the good feedback to come through and vibrate out to a larger audience and help get that contagious, you know. And
absolutely.
I feel truly blessed to be a part of this, as I know you do.
Yeah,
too.
we're lucky as fuck, man.
We are indeed. And you guys are too. We love you. And check us out at the Crazy Party Cast.
Oh, yeah. That's coming up soon.
It's going to be wild.
That should be fun.
Yeah. Much love, everybody. Thank you.
Big kiss. Mwah.